Child Labor in the Progressive Era by Kendra Gunter. In the United States during the Progressive Era, children were commonly employed in many industries. Children were used because they could be paid less than adults, were more manageable, and because of their small size, they could fit into closed spaces. In the 20 years from 1890 to 1910, the number of children working increased from 1.5 million to 2 million. This was due to the fact that more immigrants with children were coming to the United States, and with the growth of industry, there were more jobs available that were suitable for children. The most common health problems that children adopted from their labor included stunted growth, being underweight, spine curvature, tuberculosis, bronchitis, and physical and mental fatigue. Coal mines were one of the most common places for children to work. In many states, the law stated that the minimum age for boys working above ground was 14 and 16 for boys working underground. But the law was often broken in order to increase output and wages. The average number of young boys working in the mines in the Northeast was 12,000 altogether. Young boys in coal mines worked as breakers, runners, divers, door boys, couplers, and loaders. The injury and accident rate for children under 16 was 3 times higher than for workers 16 and over. Children could be hurt in a variety of ways in the mines. They could be caught or run over by cars or fall in breakers, as well as suffer from broken bones, toxins, and internal illnesses. The children suffered all of this for an average pay of 50 cents to $1.75 a day. Young boys were in high demand in the glass factories because each blower required 2 to 3 boys as helpers. Most of the boys' time was spent running between the furnaces and ovens. The boys also had the task of holding molds, cracking off, snapping up, carrying in, and warming the glass through its many stages. In the factories, the boys were paid a flat hourly or daily rate, which on average amounted to $1 a day. The glass factories ran 24/7, and the night shift was dreaded and dangerous because of the added difficulty of having to stay awake and the higher risk of injuries. The boys faced many difficulties, which included extreme heat, dehydration, tuberculosis, heavy strain, cuts, and burns. In the southern cotton mills, 25% of all employees were under 15 years old, and 50% were under 12 years old. Children worked for 10 to 12 hours, 6 days a week, for very little pay. Children worked in the spinning room as sweepers, spinners, and doffers, whose job was to replace bobbins. Girls were especially good as spinners because of their soft, slender fingers that could handle the cotton well. With whole families having to work to support themselves, even the small children and babies went with their parents to the mills so that they could be supervised and cared for. This developed into the helper system. In the helper system, the children did small tasks that increased the output and wages of their parents. Similar to the mines, the children in the cotton mills faced a 3 times greater risk of injury than the adults. The dangers that children faced in the cotton mills were catching clothes on machines, falling into machines, and lint getting into their lungs. In agriculture, children accounted for 40 to 50% of the workforce and as much as 1/3 of the total harvest. In the spring and summer, whole families would move to the countryside to work in the fields. The children endured heavy labor in hot weather, often from sun-up to sundown. Because they were paid by how much they picked, children of all ages could help their parents. 56% of the children found picking in the fields were under 10 years old. The dangerous conditions in the field were numerous. Children had to carry heavy loads for long distances, cope with open sores from picking, and deal with the insects, mosquitoes, and snakes. Jobs at canneries were also seasonal and involved the whole family moving to the site in the fall and winter. The workday began around 4 a.m. and lasted until 5 p.m. Children earned around 15 cents a day for their hard labor. In the seafood canneries, the oyster shells sliced the children's fingers and feet, and the shrimp's corrosive substance burned their cuts and caused their skin to peel. Older children had the tasks of picking, hulling, and shucking, while younger children, as young as 3 or 4, worked alongside their parents and carried the filled bucket to the family's collection station to be weighed at the end of the day. There were no laws regulating the employment of children in canneries because they did not work for the company. They were there helping their parents. In the vegetable and fruit canneries, the children endured 18-hour days shucking corn, slicing beans, and carrying 30 to 60-pound boxes of produce to weighing stations. In the larger cities, many families worked from home by making hairbrushes, powder puffs, cigarettes, and artificial flowers. They also sewed and embroidered clothing. Unlike other child labor industries, most of the children employed in homework attended school and worked when they came home. Families working in their homes made only 1/3 of the income that factory workers made. Children who did not get jobs in the factories and mills of the city made their living off being street vendors. Unlike many other child labor jobs, the children who worked on the street were highly visible, widely dispersed, and were their own bosses. These children were streetwise and independent. They sold newspapers, candy, flowers, and fruits and vegetables. The dangers that the children faced were having to move through traffic, they were unsupervised, and they had to stay out late to catch people coming home from work. As you can see, the lives of the children in the Progressive Era were difficult. They were often worked to death, and many did not live to be 20. Many laws later came along that helped to change child labor and slavery, but we are not completely rid of it yet. We need to continue to be aware of the ever-present degradation of children's lives and futures.